2020 Democratic presidential contender Senator Elizabeth Warren is out with another major policy proposal today. It is the latest in numerous policy ideas she's put forward since announcing a run for the White House. Now the 2020 contender is tackling the opioid epidemic with a $100 billion plan. For some perspective on just how bad this crisis is, every day, 130 Americans die from opioid overdoses. On a nationwide scale, roughly 21 to 29% of patients prescribed opioids for chronic pain misuse them. More than 90,000 people died from opioid overdoses in 2016 and 2017 combined. That number is higher than the 58,220 U.S. service members that died during the Vietnam War. And get this, according to a report conducted by the National Safety Council, people are now more likely to die from an opioid overdose than from a car crash. Joining me now is NBC road warrior Ali Vitali in D.C. Ali V, tell me about Elizabeth Warren's latest policy plan on opioids.
Yeah, Ali, this plan comes actually before she's about to go on a swing through West Virginia and Ohio, two states that have seen some really hard-hitting times because of this opioid crisis. But to dig into her plan a little bit, and I think that your control room has a full screen that will show what I'm talking about here. But this is an $100 billion plan over 10 years. And the way that that money breaks down is it's going to allocate about $4 billion a year to states, territories, and tribal governments that have been hardest hit by the opioid crisis. Another $2.7 billion a year goes to the hardest hit counties and cities, $1.7 billion for public health and research, $1 billion to expand research into treatment, and about $500 million a year to expand access to naloxone for first responders, one of those things that can help stop an opioid overdose. And the way that Elizabeth Warren says she's going to pay for it is with her ultra-millionaires tax, which you have heard me talk about over the course of the past several months that I've been talking about and covering Elizabeth Warren. And that's a 2% tax on wealth over $50 billion. And so that's how she says through that, which will generate about $2 trillion over 10 years, that's one of the ways that she wants to pay for this $100 billion opioid treatment plan.
Is there anything in her plan that relates to drug company executives? We've sort of seen some movement in that in the last couple of months where there are things that they are being found responsible for in terms of the opioid crisis.
Yeah, there is. And Elizabeth Warren is just one of several 2020ers who are talking about criminalizing and penalizing these drug company executives and companies. But what Elizabeth Warren says in this plan is that she would like to be able to take legal action against these companies. And one of the towns that she's going to visit in West Virginia is a little place called Kermit. This is a place with a population in the thousands that has had prescriptions over the course of the last few years of pills in the millions. And so really big in the heart of the opioid crisis, and they have actually filed lawsuits against some of these drug companies. And so Elizabeth Warren, one of the people talking about criminalizing that behavior. But I will say there's a point of contrast here. Elizabeth Warren talks about paying for this plan through the ultra millionaires tax. But Amy Klobuchar actually just came out with her own policy on substance abuse in the opioid crisis last week. Yep. She talks about paying for that plan through those lawsuits and the fines that are assessed to drug company executives through that. So there's a few different ways to target this problem. Elizabeth Warren, though, out with her latest policy this week. Both of those two candidates very heavy on specifics in their policies. I just want to outline for people the Elizabeth Warren wealth tax is a plan to tax wealth of families above $50 million, not income, but wealth, at a 2% surcharge a year, an additional surcharge of 1% for wealth over $1 billion. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.